we absolutely have to raise our frequency, raise our consciousness, and be the light and the change that we want to see in the world. Foster that inner peace so that we can help create that outer peace that the world is really missing right now. But I think the point that is missing in so many personal development programs or spaces is the action taking, because you have to start taking action and affecting others before you think you are done learning and growing and evolving, because we're never
Yes.
done. We're never perfect. We're never done.
Emotionally unavailable.
I'm just picturing all the times I've sat there like this. Like what
Yeah.
read my bio, I guess. Okay, it's so good to meet you. I'm really glad that you reached out the way you did to say what you said about, running out of matches or whatever. Um, but I feel like this is the most perfectly timed conversation right now, because a lot of my conversations, both in my personal life, my professional life, and this podcasting world, are all kind of revolving around the fact that if we want to affect real change, it has to start with us. Like I just talked to a bunch of mental health professionals on Friday, and it was hard for me to it's not hard for me to talk from a personal place, and it's not hard for me to share. Oh, ruh-roh. I don't hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I hear you too. So sometimes people's systems don't like Riverside. It may happen more than once. I'll be patient with it.
Wired. Yeah. All right.
Weird. Huh. Well, I'm not frustrated with it at all. Like I'm used to weird stuff happening.
Okay.
That's been my whole life since I started a podcast, is tech issues. So, it doesn't bother me one bit at all. So I don't want it to stress you out at all either.
All righty. No, I'm not
So,
stressed, but I was struggling a little bit with hearing your question when we were starting. So if you could
okay.
repeat it, we'll
Can you hear me
just
okay
go with it.
now? Yeah.
Hope for the best.
Okay. Well, so
I am hearing
what
you
I was
okay. Yeah.
thinking was okay, perfect. What I was thinking was, if we want the collective conscious to expand, we have to expand our own personal conscious to be able to spread that. And I wondered how that relates to what you're doing and what is that kind of what you're saying, or how is it different than what you're saying?
Oh, it absolutely relates. It all starts with each one of us. We absolutely have to raise our frequency, raise our consciousness, and be the light and the change that we want to see in the world. Foster that inner peace so that we can help create that outer peace that the world is really missing right now. So it all starts with us. But I think the point that is missing in so many personal development programs or spaces is the action taking, because you have to start taking action and affecting others before you think you are done learning and growing and evolving, because we're never
Yes.
done. We're never perfect. We're never done. But that
Right.
doesn't mean we can't take action and help others. I talk a lot about the next chapter of our evolution that a lot of people refer to as the new earth. And there's a big misunderstanding, I think, out there about how we will, if we do the inner work, we'll just be delivered into this beautiful new dimension or this new way of being.
You're right.
And the new earth is living in raised consciousness. But if we want this beautiful world on the outside, we have to create it. And that means, as we raise our consciousness, taking action to impact the 3D world as well. We have to do both.
I 100% agree. What aligned actions are you proposing?
Well, first and foremost, I would like to recommend that everyone recognize that they have the ability to really nurture and tune into their own inner wisdom is a word that I like to
Mhm.
use. Some people call it intuition. I also call it your
Yeah.
divine GPS. We all have this divine part of us that people call intuition or inner wisdom that's trying to guide us our whole life, and we're very good at ignoring it. And so,
Mhm.
if you really want peace and raised consciousness and the ability to tap into what you're really here to do and live your most fulfilled life while contributing to the collective, you want to tap into that inner wisdom so that you know you're on the right path. So that's the number one step. And I think a lot of people, and I don't know exactly who your audience is and where they are on their path, but a lot of people think that developing intuitive guidance just isn't available to them, or it's very random and maybe they'll get a little nudge sometime and that's it. But the truth is it's available to all of us, and it's a skill, not a gift. So if you're aware of it but it just doesn't show up often or when you'd like it to, you want to just be intentional in developing it because it's available to you always.
Yeah, I like that. So you feel like that's the biggest step.
Yes, absolutely. Because I know I talk a lot about aligned action taking and how it's so easy to be busy, but we aren't necessarily doing the right things at the right time or doing anything really
Mhm.
impactful or, that we really want to be doing. And the only way to know if your actions are aligned is to tap into that guidance.
Yes, I love that. Well, because I believe that we are programmed as children to tune out from that guidance because compliance is kind of what we're taught.
Absolutely. And to trust your analytical mind over your intuitive
Mhm.
guidance.
Yes, I
The
love
other
this. So
thing
what
that
is your
I
next
would
step?
recommend everyone look out for, I'm sorry, well, I was just going to say the other thing you want to look out
Yes,
for
I'm sorry.
is
We have a lag.
quite often we do, sorry about that. Quite often your intuition is going to guide you perhaps in new directions, in ways that you may not think you're capable of, or you can't see yourself doing that because of our conditioning from childhood or through our cultural surroundings. We may not see ourselves as a leader or someone that can really make a difference in our community or our family, even. We may not see that in ourselves, or an idea will come to us, but we don't see ourselves taking that next step because we like to stay in our comfort zone. That is our instinctual programming. But your intuition may often try to nudge you in new directions. And that's another reason we like to ignore it, because doing something new, we may not see it as fear, but we'll come up with all kinds of excuses not to do it because it's new and so outside of our comfort zone.
Oh my gosh, that's so true. I'm like several different little instances popped up in my brain that I thought, oh yeah, I probably still kind of do that. I wondered, I've asked this question to a couple different people who really talk strongly about intuition. Do you have any suggestions for how to discern intuition and anxiety?
Absolutely. I have a free like half hour training on my YouTube channel if I can share that link with you. But there
Yeah.
is the number one thing you want to do is recognize it's available to you, and then be curious and ask. And you can tap into your body and just kind of sit with it, because you'll know. You will have a knowing if you are just anxious or scared, or if you're really being guided to do something different or not to. Quite often, if you're feeling a little nervous about something, you probably are being guided to do something outside of your comfort zone. That probably is your intuition nudging you. And, I get this
Yeah.
question a lot where people ask, well, do you mean we don't have free will or free choice? This guidance is trying to take us in a new direction. And the point is, you always have choice. And we're quite good at making choices that aren't always the best for us. So when you recognize
Oh
that
God,
you're
yes.
able to get guidance and where it's coming from, my question is always, well, why would you ignore it then? Because you can be, more convinced that you're, okay, that is the right decision. That is what I'm supposed to do, and stop being anxious about what to decide. Why would you ignore it? But it's always your choice.
Yeah. And I think what really comes up for me when you say that is how many times in my realm of catastrophic thinking that I thought if I make the wrong choice, that every choice had a right and a wrong. And if I make the wrong was going to take me on the exact wrong path and it would be death and demise.
Yeah. Yeah, that's instinctual programs. That, it's innate in us to try and protect us from things that we don't know because we haven't done it yet. So it's innate programming to keep us stuck right where we are. But the truth is, things
Hmm.
around us are always changing. So we do have to manage the change, which includes stepping into it sometimes if we want the best possible outcomes. Um, it, the Sorry, I was going to make another point about that, and I just completely lost it. So I'll come back to that.
It's totally fine, and you just interrupt if it comes back while I'm talking, I don't care, but what came up for me when you said that was
Uh-huh.
reminding me when I learned to live in my feminine energy because I had never really been in that. I had always been in my masculine just to protect myself, and how my intuition did grow so strong when I learned
Mhm.
to be in flow and receivership. And obviously there's times you have to discern the information and then you use your masculine to enact and to integrate what you just received. But for so long, I think I was really separated because I didn't know how to sit still and receive the intuition.
Right. Yeah. One clarification on intuition I'll make, because a great way that people do use to tap into it is through meditation. But the goal, first of all, it's not the only way. You don't have to meditate. I was someone that really resisted meditation. So I just wanted to throw that in there. When you say sit with it, that's a
Yeah.
great way to do it. It's not the only way. And the goal has to be that you get to the point where it's just dropping in all the time and you're noticing it, because we make decisions every day, all day. And, they're little, and, we don't perhaps have to be that bold in our decision making, but isn't it nice to get in the habit of noticing that it's there? And okay, that's an easy decision. I'll go with that. And I do remember now what the point I was going to make, because we really get into anxiety about making the wrong decision. Again, that is instinctual. We don't want to do it wrong. We don't want to fail. We have all of these things that will come up for most of us. That's very common. So there were two things that helped me with that a lot. The first one being to recognize where the guidance was coming from. That really gave me courage to know, well, there's nothing to be scared of then. This is what I need to do. and we'll see where it goes. But the next thing was to recognize this was hard, to recognize that not every step I take, even though it's a guided, aligned action, is going to create the results I necessarily wanted, especially not the first time out of the gate. We have to take action and receive feedback, not failure, feedback, and constantly reevaluate what's next and tweak the plan or pivot the plan. And that's okay because it's the only way often to figure it out. You can't, if something's not the most basic thing or something that you've done before, so you know how it will go, you know what to do. If it's not, you're not going to figure it out just sitting and thinking about it. You have to take action and then critique that feedback you're getting when something doesn't work well and tweak it. And so recognizing that that feedback, those little failures along the way was a good thing really helped me get over that fear as well. You have to take action and start getting that feedback through failure to move at all, to have progress.
Gosh, I haven't even
Does that
thought
make
about it
sense?
in those terms in so long. Yeah, I love it because, um, I mean, I can think of so many times that felt like, man, why did I get this wrong? That now means something completely different. And I feel I can reflect on those experiences and see why they happened the way they did for now. I mean, 6 months ago, a year ago,
Uh-huh.
different decisions I made becoming an entrepreneur. I mean, I'm still learning every day in that world, but I don't it's been more of like I can see where I wasn't prepared enough for certain things, and then so the things that I went through have prepared me for where I am now, and there will be more preparation for future.
Yes, absolutely. We're always building, right? We're always building on the knowledge, the skills, the experiences, or the people we've met. None of it, it the only reason we were given memory is so that we can reflect and learn from our experiences. And then once you've learned, you need to focus forward, and not wallow in the failure, but just learn from it. That's it.
Yes. Well, and I think so much of what we've talked about so far really, really ties back to perfectionism. Just learning that like things don't have to look exactly the way you thought they were going to, and that it doesn't have to be perfect, and just to manage those expectations.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, obviously, we all want to do our due diligence and put work out there that is as good as possible. But recognize that when you go back and look at something 6 months later from a different place, you will find mistakes if you didn't recognize it in the time and the process. It's like I'm thinking about developing a website. How often people really, if it's a new entrepreneur, they don't want to push that go button
Yes.
and make it live. But then how often do you go back even a few weeks later and go, oh, I want to change that a little bit, or oh, I should say that a little differently. You have to get something out into the world first, and then you continue learning and growing and evolving.
Absolutely. I feel so seen because I've been redoing my website again for like probably the 30th time. And I remember when I started this podcast, I mean, I've kind of just made incremental upgrades in the production of it. But like at first, I had no idea what I was doing. I was recording on my phone next to the computer. It was so ridiculous. I just had no idea. But I wanted it so bad that I said perfect is the enemy of good, and I'm going to grow through this. I'm going to learn, and I'm going to just put out the content. Those early episodes crack me up. Like I'm not embarrassed by them. They are what they are. But like I, I just I it's
Yeah.
so funny how I everything's changed. But that's something I knew
Mhm.
instinctively, just go for it, sis. But I'm also an Aries rising, so it's easy for me to do that. But I watch other people sometimes really never push the go button
Yeah.
because they want it to be so perfect. And I
Yeah.
actually know someone right now that's in that
Yeah.
situation. She has really good guests and like with high following, but doesn't put out consistent content because she spends a lot of time trying to perfect it. And I'm like, "Oh, baby, it's just not got it doesn't
Mm.
have to be perfect."
Right. Right. I mean, I think if you can embrace the idea that we're not meant to be perfect, you want to be as good as possible, but we're human and we'll never be perfect, which is the beauty of our humanity. We can always be learning and growing and evolving. And wouldn't it be awful if you compared your first podcast episode to your 300th? And you didn't see or hear an improvement, right? I mean, there
Right?
should be an obvious improvement.
Yeah. And even my level of vulnerability and authenticity, I would say, has really expanded as I went. I
Mhm.
didn't realize in the beginning how scared I was to touch on certain topics. I didn't really talk about spirituality for a while because I live in Oklahoma and I know that a large
Mm.
listening base of mine is from my surrounding area because it's my friends and their friends and whatever, but I was terrified to talk about astrology, spirituality, any of those types of things. And then I just decided slowly, and then I started having more guests on, and then I was learning more. And it just got to where I was like, you know what? The people who are meant for me, they are meant for this content. Because if
Mhm.
the people meant for me are taking this journey with me, the show really is about my evolution as a human to become more emotionally available, more vulnerable, more authentic. And so the people who are attracted to this are going through the same thing. And so it's taking those steps little by little has been really exciting, but a little terrifying.
There we go back again to change, right? It's not just what we're going through, but then sharing it with others and the whole, what
Mhm.
will they think? You know what I mean? There's a lot of
Yeah.
fear of judgment that comes up. But you're so
Yeah.
right. If they're
Well, I
meant for
mean,
you, they'll stick around.
yeah. And I don't want people around that I have to censor myself. Like I want to be me in any room that I'm in. I don't want to
Mhm.
water any version of me down, whether I'm speaking to professionals, a client, my family. I really want to lead and just me forward, like my humanity, truly, because
Mhm.
that doesn't change no matter what room I'm in, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I like to, I teach a lot on leadership, and I think it's important, and we don't see enough of this right now in our world, but for all of us to be curious and open to hearing other people's perspectives. It doesn't mean because you listen to it that you have to be convinced and believe it. There's nothing
Mhm.
wrong with being open and wanting to understand someone else's perspective. So it has to be those different perspectives need sharing. So
Yeah. And what is the work that you have on your website that you're talking in terms of leading with compassion? How are you defining that? Like what does that look like in your world?
so well, as we started our conversation, we were saying it all starts with ourselves and how we're showing up and recognizing the leader within us. So, a definition of leadership, and a ton of people do not identify themselves as a leader because nobody's given them a title. So let me just preface that by saying that leadership is your ability to positively influence other people. And we all have influence, whether it's in your family or your friend group or your coworkers, your community members, we all have influence. And when you recognize that and become intentional in the influence you're exerting with others, you want it to be positive, you will be more of a beacon of light and positivity and start that ripple effect. And I think an important component to fostering more communication and consensus so that we can all move forward, decide on something, and create positive change is learning to have compassion for people who are not like us. We see a lot
Mhm.
online right now, a lot of finger pointing and villainizing those other people, people who are not like me. And a lot of times that has to do with belief systems. Not even necessarily they look different, they have a different background or whatever, but it's the beliefs. People will really fight for their beliefs. And when they hear people with other beliefs or perspectives, it threatens them, but it doesn't have to. That's where I started out saying be open to different paradigms and be curious, because you can't have a conversation about anything of substance with someone of an opposing viewpoint if you don't want to understand them and what's important to them and why they hold that viewpoint. And of course, it's handy when we get into this to practice emotional intelligence, fostering that
Yeah.
calmness within and not getting emotional if you feel like they're accusing you of a wrong thought. Being calm so you can really listen and let them know they're heard. And you have compassion for where they are and who they are, even if you don't agree with them, which frequently you won't.
Yeah, listen, honey,
So
I'm not
that
gonna lie
that
to you
that
one
starts
bit. That's
with
where I really struggle.
mm, yeah.
Not
Well,
getting too
it's
emotional is
hard
really hard.
and it's a skill to practice. We were talking about skills and building awareness of what the triggers are. This is a great topic to because please know you are not alone. If you haven't done work on this and really work to develop a skill to regulate your emotions, everyone gets triggered. So the first step is to notice when. Like, what is it? Is it a particular person? Is it a type of situation? Because usually there's trends. There's something going on. And usually it has to do with things that are outside of our control that we want to be able to
Mhm.
control. A common triggers are close family members because we feel safer with them and we let it out. We're trying to control our emotions all day at work. You get home, you're tired, and it does take some energy to learn to intentionally control your emotions so that you can speak calmly and convey your point without overreacting. But it's really worth the time to notice what those triggers are and then work toward regulating them, not allowing them. If we have a minute to go down this rabbit hole for just a minute, all emotions are created by our thoughts. So if you notice you're getting overreactive or you're feeling an emotion at all in, any circumstance that you don't enjoy, check your thought. What are you thinking? And is that the only way to think about that person or that circumstance? If someone wasn't as close to that person emotionally, would they think about it the same way? An example I often
Mhm.
use is, a friend or a partner who shows up late all the time. You could think they don't value me or my time. I feel really not seen or valued, and take it personally. That's one way to look at it, and that perspective could lead to being triggered and a emotional response, which then creates a reaction in them, and you end up, in full blown war, maybe. Uh, But you could choose a perspective like they are really bad at managing their time. They do this all the time. It's not me, it's them. And that may not improve the circumstance, but it could give you a point of a more neutral way of thinking about it that's not personal. You're not taking it personally, and so you can be a little calmer in commenting on the circumstance and trying to convey your disappointment or whatever that is without getting emotional. Because when we get emotional, we're not thinking clearly and it shuts down their listening as well. So we don't get anything accomplished.
I just had the biggest epiphany that one of the real big triggers for me in conversation with people who don't have the same viewpoint is I get so frustrated because I'm like, you just don't see that your opinion or belief comes from a place of fear, shame, and scarcity, which scarcity is fear. And I get so triggered, and it's because it triggers my fear that there won't be change as long as people like this exist in this space. Like, as long as there's so many of this opinion that's harming us as a collective, instead of just going,
Yeah,
hey, it's gonna take repetition. They have to understand
that's it.
first. So you have to offer the understanding. You have to co-regulate with them. You have to help them get beneath that fear, beneath the scarcity. And you can't if you're living in your own fear. That was a big aha for me, Cynthia.
Mhm. Awesome. Well, and the other thing to just come around to terms with is if someone is of a very strong different belief from you, they're going to have their guard up and they don't want to hear it from you. And that's fine. You know, we
Mm-hmm.
need to regulate our own expectations. But when you start from a place of compassion and curiosity, asking questions and wanting to understand them, not to convince yourself of their point of view, but to understand and to
Mm-hmm.
allow them to know that you're trying to understand them, it helps them feel seen and heard, which every human wants. And in some
Yes.
cases,
And
and it may not
deserves.
happen the first time you have a conversation like this, but over time, it will lessen their resistance to listening to you. And that's really, if someone is really set in their ways, that's the only way to approach it. And to be okay with the idea that, okay, they may never let down their resistance and let me speak, but I do have to stay calm and offer to share. Would it be okay to share my point of view? That's really interesting what you just shared. I've never thought about it this way. Can I share what I was thinking? Eh, They may say no, but if you're not confrontational, you have a better opportunity of opening that door for conversation. And you very likely, in the beginning, will both go away still holding the same views you always had, but you've opened the door to conversation and understanding each other. And you never know what the next conversation will bring. I just always recommend try and stay non-confrontational. If there's data or research you can share, offer it, but you can't, nobody likes to be told what to think, so you can't force it on them. But if you offer resources, then they can come around to forming their own opinions.
Yeah, I really like that. And I think just having an understanding that I was leading with fear too, just in a different way,
Mhm.
like that really helps me to kind of keep things in perspective. That I like this is a good segue into what you have about faith on your website. I'm curious about your perspective, but for me, I do have a faith
Mhm.
that we are moving in the right direction, even though it looks completely opposite of that. I know that more people are awakening to the things that we're talking about. And I have a faith that that is what we're
Mhm.
doing as a collective, whether people are aware of it or not. So I just have to live in that faith instead of fear. So how does that tie into kind of what your message is on faith?
Well, what you probably I'm not sure what you were reading. I talk a lot about hope, and Hope for the New Era is the name of my first book. And hope, the
Mhm.
definition of hope is faith in action. So that ties us back to where we started with taking
Ah.
action. You have to have faith in something.
Right.
And of course, as a spiritual teacher, my faith is in a higher power and the wisdom that comes to me from divinity and guides me, and that is available to every single one of us when we look for it and stay curious and tap into that wisdom. I have faith in that. But if you are not spiritual, try and find faith in yourself, belief and faith in yourself and your community and the positive efforts you see, because we can get really overwhelmed with all the negativity in the news cycle, but there's a lot of positive going on.
Yes.
Find faith in that and then take action to help, because the reason I keep going back to taking action is when we're bombarded with all of this chaos, it really can shut us down and feel overwhelming and very disempowering. And the only way to get out of that is to take some kind of small action. It doesn't have to be big. And the last thing you want to do is overanalyze. Oh, what should I do? There's so many things I could do. Pick the smallest thing, the smallest little micro action that you can't talk yourself out of. It's so simple, and do it today. Because once you start taking action, not only will that create hope, but it creates empowerment. And as we were talking
Mm.
earlier, as you get into action, you'll have other ideas and you may end up going in a completely different direction, have a complete new epiphany about how you would like to impact a person or a situation. And you could go in a different direction, but first you have to take some kind of action to start feeling that empowerment that you can make a difference in somebody's life, because we all have influence. You can, don't look, unless you're in politics, don't look at how you can change the entire world. Look at your own sphere of influence you already have and make somebody's day or moment better. And you will feel empowered and you will be inspired to do more afterward. And you will inspire others. You'll start that ripple, and that's powerful.
Well, and just honoring your own lived experience as the leadership tool, like that you don't have to be Gandhi or any of these huge leaders that we've looked to in history to be the change. You can
Mhm,
grow as a human and step by
mhm,
step just share that with the people around you, how your life is changing and how your heart is changing and how your
mhm,
vibrations are changing. I mean, honestly, I feel lucky because I've always known that was my purpose. Go through something, figure it out, share. It's changed how that looks. A lot has changed in 45 years,
yeah,
but like
yeah,
that's been my role is to evolve and share, evolve and share. So yeah, I mean it all it takes even is saying, I know I used to feel that way too, but I don't feel that way anymore. That's a small micro step that you can take in a
uh-huh,
conversation with your best friend. Like, yeah, I've been thinking about it and that doesn't resonate with me
yeah.
anymore.
Absolutely. Yeah, the conversation with a friend is a great example of a place to start. Instead of talking about what you always talk about, bring up a topic that's on your mind that's bothering you and brainstorm with them and find an accountability partner to do something with. That's always more fun anyway.
Absolutely.
It's an
And I
easy
know
way to
for myself,
start.
I was getting kind of wrapped up like with the activists online. I was getting kind of wrapped up. I was in a little bit of an echo chamber for a second, just hearing people say like these are the things you have to do, and if you don't, you're not really a part of the mission. And I was like real triggered by that, but then I was like, well, honey, that's just their opinion. Like you don't have to listen to that. I mean, okay, they may
Yeah,
not approve of you, and you'll live. You'll live.
that's right. That's right. I would highly recommend not listening to anyone online. Tap into your inner wisdom. You can get
Absolutely.
ideas.
No, you're
Okay,
so
is that
right.
something I could
Uh-huh.
impact? You can look around and get ideas, but then go within. Yeah.
Yes, and that's what when you said when we very first started talking and you said tapping into your inner wisdom, I was like, yeah, because that's my home base. I hear something and I'm like, do I have the capacity for that? Does it feel like an aligned step for me? I'm coming home to myself for a second. No, it doesn't. And
Mhm.
that's okay. I'm moving on. Like I do that a lot because right now I don't
Beautiful.
feel called to be a bigger part of that. I feel called to be very in my world, in this world, and in the people around me,
Mhm.
affecting change there.
Mhm. But that's how the ripple starts. That like the 5 people you touch, they all go touch another 5 people and so on. That's massive impact. And it can start with each one of us.
Absolutely. I actually just had a really wild experience with a client last night who I've I've seen her for a long time, not that long, but like a year. And um she made changes very quickly, but she has a mother who was very resistant to change. And there was a lot of cultural and generational factors at hand. And then all of the sudden, Monday, her mom had an epiphany about why she does some things that she does. And I'm giving you the very abbreviated version, but she awoke and
Right.
and they had the most beautiful raw conversation. And I just thought to myself, like, wow. I told her when I first met her, when you change, the world around you changes. Focus on you. Nothing, you're going to be different, and that's going to make the people around you different. Some will leave, some will draw nearer, but we really didn't
Mhm.
think, we never expected this from her mother. Never, never,
Yeah.
never. Like, we've been managing that relationship as best as we could, like as me helping
Mhm.
her or whatever. And then I was like, "Oh my gosh." And the most amazing part was she saw the generational tie with her own mom and her own grandma and her own siblings, and how she's parented
Mhm.
my client, this child, and the difference. And like, I'm still really overwhelmed by the conversation that we had last night because I'm like, wow, that was the most confirmation I've had
Mhm.
so far of, like, my effect in the ripple and, like, where I started and how the people around
Mhm.
me are affected and how they are now affecting the people around them. Like, I just wept through the whole conversation because I was like, "Wow." I mean, it's real. It's very real, and it certainly
Mhm.
increased my faith. I had it anyway, but I was like, "We were right, guys.
Yeah.
We were right."
That's beautiful. Yeah. I do say don't like you can't usually see the ripple, and that is a great analogy of how it can happen. Typically, we won't see it, but it's there. It's always there. And it can work both ways. If you're not intentional and you're not influencing in a positive way, it could have the opposite influence. But when you're intentional and positive and trying to be a bright light in the world, it just amplifies and goes out and ripples. It's beautiful. Great example.
Thank you. Well, and I totally agree with you. And I think even when you don't see it, you can feel it. You feel you receive it right back at you. It's like a reverb, like you put it out, it comes back, you put it out. That's the way I experience it anyway.
That's beautiful. Yep.
Well, Cynthia, I have super loved talking with you. Is there, an actionable takeaway that you would like our audience, to summarize?
Well, let's see. The number one thing which we've talked about, if you are not familiar with tapping into your inner wisdom, please just be curious. Know that it's available to you and uh, start getting intentional in developing it because it's the number one best thing you can do for yourself in any area of your life, any area to have that surety in the steps you're taking forward is just something money can't buy. So I recommend, and I will share a link to that training I mentioned. And I also would recommend, if we can share my website, I have a free resource on how to measure and raise your frequency. We touched on that just a tiny little bit today, but it absolutely, to be intentional in raising your frequency is really mission critical for us to start showing up in higher consciousness and creating the world that we want to live in. So, when we talk about starting with ourselves, lifting intentionally, lifting your frequency, and then developing your inner wisdom, which becomes easier as your frequency lifts. So that's a win-win. Those are the first steps.
I love that. And I will make sure to include those links in my show notes too. Like anything that I see needs a separate link, I'll make sure to include it. But I do have your website pulled up here too. So
Beautiful.
well, thank you so much for being here. I'd love to have you back too.
That it was a delight. I really enjoyed speaking to you. And I think there are a couple of action items we've talked about, but the biggest thing is take action. Just one small little something right away. And thank you for having me.
I agree.
It's been a joy.
Okay, I'm going to push stop. You're so welcome. Good. I hope so. I'm sorry for the internet issues. I'm going to push
Here we
stop,
go.
but hang out for 1 second if you don't mind.
Thanks for coming to Emotionally Unavailable. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, and share.